Ladies and gentlemen, here are four of the nicest youngsters we've ever had on our stage. The Beatles! Bring them on!
I would say out of the whole Beatlemania, that's all you have to say is, yeah, 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 you know, and that sums it up, it really does, in one phrase.
This is one of the great phenomenons of the modern music industry. It's these four guys from a pretty working class background, from an industrial town, have created a whole wedge of music that is one, timeless, two, irreplaceable, and three, will never ever be copied.
I think the Beatles, without a doubt, would be the biggest band in the world. In my opinion, there's no one bigger than the Beatles.
They were making great records and making great music which came from the heart and came from people that teenagers could identify with because they were the same people.
As far as songwriters go, you know, Lennon and McCartney, their music will definitely, you know, live well past the era of our generation.
Yes, she loves you, and you know you should be glad.
We're not splitting the atom by listening to a Beatles song. We're actually sitting there and enjoying it. We're not having to think and be morbid. We're sitting there and enjoying it. We're not having to dissect it and find another meaning, even though you could, because you just sit there and enjoy it. And that's what's great about their work. It's about communication, and they've communicated all this time very quickly, and they will do for a while.
Love Me Do is pretty unusual in terms of Beatle tracks because what you always remember is the harmonica lick, which I think was nicked from Bruce Chanel's Hey Baby, if I'm not mistaken.
It lays heavily on the second and the fourth beat in the bar, ba, da, da, which gives the whole thing the groove.
And it immediately diffuses all that kind of sugary sweetness that McCartney was addicted to.
There was something so basic and simple and honest about this wonderful sound, Love Me Do, blasting from the jukebox, compared to, say, all the Tin Pan Alley songs that you were used to hearing, or even the old style rock and roll tunes.
I mean, if you go back to where this sort of style begins with rock and roll in the mid-50s, then it was the energy and the crudeness of that was absolutely crucial in the whole style catching on. But by 1962, we'd lost that. So in a sense, there was a rediscovery of that sort of crudeness.
Love me do, oh, love me do.
And what John did on that song, and on many songs over the career of the Beatles, is he would take the low harmony, and that was really something that isn't done very often then or even now. But that intrigued me, and it made the song have a very warm, different tonal sound to it than you normally hear in a pop song.
With a verse, you'd normally expect a length of, well, a regular length of something like 8, 12 or 16 bars. What we get here is 10. There's a phrase which they begin with, which is repeated twice. Now that's not unusual, but then is repeated a third time. Now that is unusual. And then we go into the end of the verse.
Love, love me do, you know
Please Please Me, the second Beatles single, the first #1.
They were thinking of it as more of a Roy Orbison type of a ballady type song. George Martin decided that no, we should speed it up a little bit, you know, and give it a bit more of a faster pace. And I think that was the success of that song, is the fact that you know, Martin could see something more in that song than when the Beatles first brought it to him.
That really is quite climactic, and it works extremely well. Very, very simple.
It's a very overtly sexual invitation from Lennon. You know, there's sort of the way that when it gets to the chorus, it's come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, please, please me. So he was being quite kind of, you know, tongue-in-cheek about it, but on later sort of examination, you can clearly see it's talking about sort of basically, you know, he's a fairly horny young dude.
In those days, bands played the instruments and they had backup groups to do harmonies. And it was almost unheard of for just the players themselves to be also doing all the harmonies and all the singing.
It's rather like when you hear a choir, a church choir, you get that feeling of warmth and contentment coming from it. And also, I think this is part of the Beatles' secret, really, is that they seem to be singing directly to you, and that song really kind of sums up that feeling, I think.
Until the Beatles came along, the album chart was more or less the preserve of West End musical soundtracks, Hollywood soundtracks, balladeers, crooners. So while we look back at the albums now, and it's hard to judge what their impact was, I think certainly running through the 60s, the albums became more important because the Beatles were important.
It was a really wise choice by George Martin and EMI to not to put the sort of onus on the Beatles to come up with a whole album's worth of material, because I don't think they would have come up with as good an album.
It was intended to present the Beatles, being it was their first album, as a kind of a live feel as to what they were doing in their live shows.
It doesn't matter whether the song is an original that they've written at the instruments, or whether it's one that they simply like the vocal of, or they like the harmonic pattern of. They do it in exactly the same way, and it's that sort of commonality which blurs the distance between the original stuff and the covers. So you come to something like Twist and Shout, and because you're used to the way that the Beatles approach it, if you didn't know the Isley Brothers original, it's a Beatles track.
Well, shake it up, baby. Shake it up, baby. Twist and shout. Twist and shout. Come on, baby. Come on, baby. Come on and work it on out. Work it on out. Work it on out. You know you look so good. Look so good. You know you got me going. Got me going.
hard when you're a big fan of somebody to copy their work, because you never imagine you can do a good as job as what they did. And I think the Beatles surpassed it easily. Isley Brothers do an awesome song, but really the Beatles version, there is something about the energy and the fact that it opened all their shows when they played in North America.
Definitive version in many ways, especially with the John Lennon's screaming vocals and Ringo's powerful explosions at the end when he finishes it with a couple of powerful snare drum beats. It's still a great performance of that kind of soul anthem.
Ringo has said about himself that he can't play a drum solo to save his life. But what he is, though, he's a great timekeeper. And if you listen to some of the outtakes that have been released through the years where there's breakdowns, it's never Ringo's fault.
What you needed was a solid backbeat. He could certainly do that. A rock and roll feel. And also a kind of quirkiness to his playing. So you get all these unexpected little drum fills.
I've heard it said that Ringo is a left-handed person playing right-handed drums, and if that's actually true, I'm not a drummer myself, but if it's actually true, it could explain why he had his own little vocabulary on the drums, why he'd do certain patterns.
I wanna be your man. 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 Tell me that you love me, baby. Let me understand. Tell me that you love me, baby. I wanna be your man.
Okay, well, Lennon and McCartney came up with the lyrics and the melodies and the harmonies by and large. But they wouldn't be the songs we know were it not for the drum track that you've actually got there. So his contribution as a performer is put on one side as a performer's contribution.
A journalist asks John Lennon, is Ringo the best drummer in the world? And John Lennon looks at him and says, mate, Ringo isn't even the best drummer in the Beatles, because Paul McCartney used to play drums quite well, and McCartney was always on Ringo's sort of ass about about styles of playing, which really hurt Ringo and sort of made him kind of feel vulnerable. His position was, he felt was vulnerable in the band throughout.
Pardon, pardon. Yeah. I'd like more drums there.
No, I think it's on that.
It sounds like a
on the other
cover,
bit, where you
right
got on the third bit. You know, on the third bit.
Okay. More bang.
If you put another drummer in the Beatles, would they be as good? No. Would they be the Beatles? No. Ringo is a Beatle.
He's an important element of them becoming as successful as they became.
And the Americans loved Ringo. I mean, he was the most popular Beatle. And they had like campaigns, Ringo for President. Most of the novelty songs that came out in '64 and '65 were about Ringo. One of them was that, you won't go far without a guitar unless you're Ringo Starr. That was a great title for a song.
Remember that at this period, albums were basically there to resell the single to people who'd already got it and to put in some padding just to make it album length. And something like Please Please Me begins to feel as if it belongs, all those tracks belong together.
10 of the tracks were done in one day, in one 15-hour day. I mean, to stereo, it's like amazing that, that they arrived at such quality.
And the Beatles, they did it all live, and they were just so young and really inexperienced, and they just fell right into it. They were made to do what they did.
1, 2, 3, da 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 da. If there's anything that you want, if there's anything I can do, just call on me and I'll send it along. With love from me to you, I got everything that you want, like a heart that's so true. Just call on me and I'll send it along. With love from me
From Me to You has the familiar Lennon and McCartney credit. And in those days, Lennon and McCartney actually did write the songs together.
They were on the road touring extensively, and so the half an hour here and 20 minutes in this hotel room and 3 hours before this show, John and Paul were sitting down and writing some of these songs that would cement the Beatles' musical sound.
And most songs are 2 verses, then a chorus, and then a solo, and then it's repeated. But they go right into the chorus right off the bat, and then go into a verse. And it brings some excitement to the beginning of a tune where you kind of go, whoa, what's that?
And it's got the trademark in the middle of it from the Beatles, you know, which they were well known for. And if you look at the construction of it, it's a very cleverly constructed little pop song.
8-bar verse, followed by another 8-bar verse, followed by an 8-bar middle 8, let's call it, and then another 8-bar verse. So you've got a standard AABA 32-bar form, which is not a key element of rock and roll as they would have inherited it, but it comes from the sort of Tin Pan Alley tradition.
They'd sort of gone and looked into jazz, standards, classical music, and looked at how material was constructed. And they've come up with, you know, From Me to You, and it became a winning formula, and they employed it sort of countless times later as well.
They're beginning to get a formula, but it's the middle 8s and the verses and the changes from the verses to the chorus that give them the keys, and the harmonies between John and Paul, which make it very clever.
Construction is all important, really. It's just a sort of interplay between the voices, and the message of the song is like From Me to You. What a wonderful way to establish a relationship, really, not only between the guy and the girl that they're singing about, but also between the band and its audience. Somehow the Beatles are giving you something.
She almost lost her mind. Now she said she knows you're not the hurting kind. She said she loves you, and you know that can't be right. Yes, she loves you, and you know you should be glad. She loves you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, I mean, not brilliant lyrics to say the least, but certainly very historical, and it just shows you how simple that rock and roll could be.
It's up to you. I think it's only fair. Pride can hurt you too. Apologize to her because she loves you, and you know that can't be bad. Yes, she loves you, and you know you should be glad.
And it was just the perfect love song for the time. Yes, she loves you, and if you listen to the lyrics, it really hit home with the young kids.
And it was a massive hit. I mean, massive. It went in there and stuck for weeks. And, you know, they were selling 100,000 a day, for Christ's sake. You know, it was unbelievable.
I mean, it's just had all the ingredients of a great pop song. Great strong melody, great hook. That's the thing they knew about, you know, they knew how to get the hook of the song across, the chorus of the song across.
What's great about the track overall, my favourite aspect of the track, is the Ringo's drumming. I think it's really like superb, and you know, Ringo doesn't really get the accolade he actually deserves, I think.
What you've actually got there is what will become 10 years later the verse, pre-chorus, chorus of mainstream pop and heavy metal. So if we threw away She Loves You, we'd lose the whole next 50 years of development, really.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you something I think you'll understand when I say that something. I wanna hold your hand, I wanna hold your hand, I wanna hold your hand.
The Ed Sullivan Shows was extremely important.
It was a big deal.
They saw how an American TV show worked. The whole of America saw the Beatles.
So as a springboard for America, it was huge.
By just having one or two performances for him, they could basically cover the whole of America coast to coast.
You know, you hear stats like the juvenile delinquent crime rate dropped that night because everyone was at home watching it on television. You know, just like everyone who was alive in that era could tell you where they were when they heard Kennedy died, most people will tell you that they saw the Beatles that night in February.
To appear on the Ed Sullivan Show was like the music business seal of approval.
When you were on Ed Sullivan, you were a star, and I think to us young kids at the time, it solidified the fact that these guys are mega stars and they're here to stay.
I think it was very sort of careful, clever management that got the Beatles to where they are, but the Ed Sullivan shows were crucial in their career development.
It was crucial, really. I don't know if you could say they were being marketed. I think they were just being unveiled, really. I prefer that, this phenomenon of the Beatles. The Americans just loved the group.
I think you'll understand when I say that something. I wanna hold your hand.
A lot of people that grew up in that era, especially people that later went on to form bands, the very first time they saw the Beatles was on the Ed Sullivan Show in February 1964, and that was the song that was #1 at the time. And for a lot of people, they equate the early Beatles with I Want to Hold Your Hand, especially in North America. That song really defines an era.
It was actually quite a lot slower. It was almost like a ballad when they wrote it, and George Martin lifted the tempo, and that's what made it click straight away.
It's just a very cool, simple subject matter, which was very well done in the great Beatles way, with great melodies, great middle eights, just very well put together.
And when I touch you, I feel happy inside. It's such a feeling that my love I can hide, I can hide, I can hide. Yeah, you got that something.
John Lennon plays what would be considered almost as prehistoric heavy metal kind of a rhythm guitar track. Very aggressive.
It's got a really strong melody against the chords, and that's why I think a song like that stands the test of time, because of the power of the melody.
It may have been a simple song, but the way it was performed and the combination of the two, plus of course the visuals, remember that television was beginning to come into its own then, that really the Beatles made each and every song of theirs their own.
The vocals explode into almost an orgasmic kind of a finale. It just keeps going and going, and you know, it's just the most important thing in his life is he's got to hold that girl's hand, and he really, really means it, you know.
I think you'll understand when I feel that something. I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your
All My Loving, for me, is one of the great unsung heroes of the Beatles era, that early era. It's such an unbelievably great song.
Close your eyes and I'll kiss you. Tomorrow I'll miss you. Remember, I'll always be true. And then while I'm away, I'll ride home every day, and I'll send all my loving to you.
When All My Loving came out, it was on their second album in England with the Beatles, and by the time they came over to North America, that song was one of the first songs I think they opened up with The Sullivan Show.
All my loving, I will send you. All my loving, darling, I'll be true.
It was a key song in the Beatles' career. It was just the right balance between kind of schmoozy romanticism and kind of professional, quite hard-driving rock band.
And there's a sense in which they're taking further what they have done previously, because instead of basically 4-chord loops, which is what we'd had up to this point, you have a much longer pattern. Gosh, it sounds like organ music like that, doesn't it? But that's what they're doing. That's the underlying pattern. You have an 8-chord sequence. And they finish with that. Now, we happen to be in E major at this point. That chord belongs. That chord is borrowed from a sort of a blues background.
This is about where they started losing some of the high end in their sound, in my opinion. You won't hear that cymbal crash and the snare quite as much. You're starting to hear a little bit more of the bottom end of the song, a little bit more bass. Bass is a little more predominant in that song, in the drums as well as the actual bass playing.
Paul had this walking bass line that was unheard of before. It just, there were so many chords in it, and he just had this beautiful walking bass line all the way through. And it was kind of overshadowed even by John's jangly rhythm guitar, which is very, very hard to execute on stage or studio or anything.
And Lennon always said that he had a hard time playing that song because of the complicated sort of fretting pattern on that song. So definitely it was a step up. The Beatles were experimenting more. They were doing something that was different. They weren't copying so much as developing and innovating.
What we have here is a song I think that's fairly well advanced, certainly compared with their first compositions on the first album.
To this day, I can't believe that a song's so good that it would never have used it as a single. But that's certainly my all-time favorite Beatles song. I can listen to that thing forever.
All my love, all my love, darling, all be true. All my love, all my love, I will send to you.
By then they could have easily written the whole album, but I think obviously because again they're a new band still, even though they were knocking out number ones like anybody's business, they still obviously had people around them still didn't trust them to write a whole album full of their own material, which I think is a bit sad because I think they could have.
You couldn't yet get away with an album of entirely self-penned material, so you actually had to put in some standards in there. Things like Money and Roll Over Beethoven work well because they're the sort of rock and roll stuff that the Beatles have been playing for years. They're very familiar with that sort of style, and they're beginning to turn out things in their own style.
A lot of these American influences were very much a big draw on the Beatles. They really wanted to put a lot of these songs into their repertoire, and I think at the time when that album came out, they were still unsure that their songs on their own could sell an album. So you throw a bunch of different covers on there too, because the average record buyer will go, oh, I know that song, Money, and they'll buy the album maybe on that purpose.
It's a way of sort of cementing themselves within the tradition to take on a song like that, which may not belong really within their repertoire, but because it uses material that they themselves use elsewhere, it's a way of saying, we're actually firmly within this. Gosh, you don't want to think about tradition really, do you, for early Beatles? But that really is what they're saying. We're not doing anything outrageous.
Well, that was a hard day's night, kind of thing. And John will go, hey, there's a song,
I mean, what a way to start an album. This was still a world where you expected introductions, proper introductions to songs. And all you get is this dissonant chord, which rings and actually suggests nothing about what's going to follow. I mean, incredible.
It's been a hard day's night.
There's no way that you can't actually just hear the beginning of that song and know who it is and what it is. It's a brilliant song.
This was the start of bringing in the slightly tougher approach and then juxtaposing it with the slightly sugary, more sort of softer middle section.
There's a sort of bit of a slight humour in there as well. It's not completely, sort of just Hard Day's Night, sort of play on words. So it's still got a little bit of the kind of sort of romantic Beatles sort of theme running through it, but it's kind of much more confident.
And it was a step forward in melody and the way the backing vocals were arranged. Very, very good song.
And yet it came from such simple beginnings, right? A funny phrase that was said in passing to a song that was written in an evening to being recorded a couple days later, and the title of a film and stuff like that. It just shows you how the Beatles had progressed in such a short period of time and could also deliver the goods so quickly.
I suppose the next big step for the Beatles was to go onto the screen. I mean, people had seen them on television, but everybody had wanted to really get closer to the Beatles and see them, hear them talking, find out what they were like.
It was the first harder rock movie that was made that was a success in the cinemas.
One slip of the razor and... Help me! Headphones! Help me! Help! Torpedoed again, eh?
They just blew everyone away. They just made the right film with the right director, with the right script, at the right time, using all the right material. They couldn't have done it better.
Because United Artists thought the Beatles would probably just be a flash in the pan, sort of, overnight success and then disappear, they decided to make the movie for a £150,000 budget and in black and white to save money. So I think, in fact, actually, Paul McCartney said that thank God they made it in black and white, because if it had been in colour, it would have been crap.
It could have been a disaster. It could have gone the wrong way. They could have proven to be inept and embarrassing, or perhaps just not at home in a film medium. But in fact, they turned out to be just as confident and self-possessed as they appeared on stage or in interviews.
Tell me, how did you find America?
So I left to Greenland.
Has success changed your life?
Yes.
I'd like to keep Britain tidy.
Are you a mod or a rocker?
No, I'm a mocker.
Oh.
A Hard Day's Night was more or less art imitating life, showing a beat group going around the country in a bus, being chased by fans and never having a moment's rest. So you could say that it wasn't exactly challenging to write the script for that one.
In fact, a lot of people think that it was all ad-libbed, but there was virtually no ad-libbing at all. It was all scripted, written by a scriptwriter, Alan Owen. But because they were sort of young and they'd never acted and they were a little bit nervous, each line has a maximum of 6 words in it.
Obviously what the Beatles would do for the movie musical, which in a sense was what this now was, an updating of the musical tradition, that would obviously set a tone for other groups to follow and for what was to come later in the decade.
That's another first for the Beatles.
Can't buy me love, love, can't buy me love. I'll buy you a diamond ring, my friend, if that makes you feel alright. I'll get you anything, my friend, if it makes you feel alright. 'Cause I don't care too much for money, but money can't buy me.
Can't Buy Me Love was an interesting song because it was the first major Beatles song to feature one vocal rather than Lennon and McCartney together.
And of course, seeing the Beatles in the movie A Hard Day's Night, aping around in the giant field when that song was playing, it had a real fun flavour to it.
I And I think still at this stage, George Martin was just helping them to, you know, drop that chord there, guys, or, you know, that's good, repeat that. So he was giving them his arrangement ideas.
But what's significant is that the guitar, the electric guitar, has really comes to the fore and is mixed louder and drives the track along.
It was much more sort of aggressive, not in a mad way, but there was a tougher sort of sound and a tougher record and slightly more guitar-y. And I think in that way it made slightly more impact.
The public responded really well. They really liked the kind of more driving, harder edge, because by now bands like the Stones were starting to not really give the Beatles so much competition, but they were dirtier and harder and more kind of rock and roll. And the Beatles already were sort of starting to take on this kind of goody-goody image, which I don't think they really liked.
So you've got the blue third, and you've got a melody which is falling all the time, and it's scalic. Those characteristics are all important. You get into the middle eight or the bridge. You've lost your blue third. You've lost the falling nature of the melody. It's now basically rising, and you've lost the scalic aspect. It's now basically an arpeggio.
I suppose you realise this is private property.
Sorry we hurt your field, mister.
In retrospect, I would consider that George Martin was the fifth Beatle.
They could do something he couldn't do, and he could do something they couldn't do. Perfect marriage.
Without him, we wouldn't have had such great records at all.
And it's very hard to work out where production ends and arrangement begins, because with Can't Buy Me Love, for instance, when you hear that song, you hear the chorus comes first. In fact, when they played it to him, the chorus didn't come first. He said, well, put it up front, lads, that's where it belongs, that's where it'll hit home quickest. And if you like, if that was a production hint, an arrangement or whatever, it was something George Martin helped them out with that helped make the song.
He allowed an unknown band to record their own material. Major step, changed everything for everyone over the whole planet. He changed everything. From then on in, new bands with no track record, with nothing behind them, could record their own material. This has never been done before. He changed pop music forever.
He was able to write for strings, he was able to walk into an orchestra session and say, I want you to play this, I want you to play that, write it down, give it to the musicians and they could play or play on the piano. And the Beatles respected him, and he respected them.
As time went on, perhaps they outgrew him, but certainly for the early to mid period, it was a large part of George Martin that went in with the Lennon and McCartney.
They learned a lot from George Martin, and he was at the right place at the right time, and thank God for that.
And I Love Her was a good example of not just sort of screaming, twist and shout. It was John and Paul and thinking about writing more mature, introspective material.
You know, here was a song that had a very different beat, you know. The Ringo had a, you know, the drumming in it was, you know, a very different style. And it was just basically Paul and the acoustic guitar. Very nice song.
She gives me everything and tenderly the kiss my lover brings, she brings to me, and I love her.
It was that searching for a new way of communicating an idea, an old idea, and I Love Her. It's been around, love song's been around forever, but they always seem to find a new way to introduce it to the public that would grab you in some way and kind of go, hey, that's interesting.
Unbelievably, he manages to just avoid it sort of turning into ludicrous sort of soppiness, and I think a lot of that's down to the quality of his voice. He just had this sort of inbuilt knowledge to just be tender enough, but then to put the odd little bit of kind of angst in there as well.
Here was an indication of that he could switch from tough rock and roll to writing sweet ballads. It was very good.
Bright are the stars that shine, dark is the sky. I know this love of mine will never die, and I love her.
I'm not sure whether I'd say it's an improvement to the Hard Day's Night album because it's entirely Lennon and McCartney compositions.
I actually think there's more consistency there because this is all their own material.
It was great to listen to an album that was all new. It wasn't covers where, oh yes, I've heard that song, great cover, but I've heard the song. And I think it was a landmark in that sense where you knew they were here to stay.
You say you will love me if I have to go. You'll be thinking of me, somehow I will know.
I think one of the standout tracks on the Hard Day's Night album is Things We Said, one of the few McCartney songs on the whole record. It's a very simple song, and I think that without it on the album would probably be a little bit, maybe too contemporary. You know, it was quite a departure from earlier Beatles material.
It's quite virtuosic. It uses a very common pattern, the cycle of fifths. It uses it there, but it uses a different one in the middle eight. Now that's quite virtuoso. You're actually shifting key and you're using the same pattern but a different portion of the pattern.
And as it turned out, it's a brilliant soundtrack to a good, pretty good movie.
Someday when we're dreaming, deep in love, not a lot to say, then we will remember things we said today.
McCartney is an amazing songwriter and an amazing bass player because he plays a melody on a bass which people don't see. His bass playing is really, really clever.
He did things that no other bass player did at that time, and probably very few do today.
People didn't really notice the bass much before Paul started playing it because he usually played quite high up. It's a kind of light sort of swinging bass playing, really. It kind of has a singing quality. His bass playing reflects his vocal style in many ways.
I'll pretend that I'm kissing the lips I am missing and hope that my dreams will come true. And then while I'm away, I'll ride home every day and I'll send all my loving to you.
He started creating melodies, counterpoints to the guitar, which really added to the vocabulary of someone who would learn the bass after him.
Yeah, Paul McCartney is really quite an interesting bass player. For instance, one of the things he might do when he was playing is if he's playing over a C chord, the first bar he'd play the C root, the second bar he'd move to the third of the chord and play the E root. If he was playing over a G chord, first bar he might play G and then he'd move to the B. So there's always this climbing feeling, and he had a great ear for doing it, all that sort of taking something and making it a little bit more melodic without it being complex.
All my love I will send to you. All my loving, darling, all the true. All my loving, all my loving, all my loving, I will send to you.
Hit songs before the Beatles were more or less Boy, Girl, Moon, June, something based on what a guy would buy his girlfriend, or possibly vice versa. So when the Beatles took up their songwriting pens, it was obvious to carry on the tradition that they knew all about.
It is the Beatles locking into what everybody else was singing about. and presumably what their audiences wanted to listen to songs about.
It was to do with them speaking to their fans. And when you look back, I guess it was a bit repetitious, but at the time, nobody noticed.
Him and John would actually sit down and they'd think like, if I was a teenage girl, what would I want the Beatles to sort of, you know, say to me kind of thing, or what would I want? And so they were really aware of that sort of thing. And they wanted to make songs where people, you know, especially that teen market, would pick up on that. And especially the young girl market, that would want them to think that, oh, this, you know, Paul wrote this song for me kind of thing, you know, and, you know, this kind of idea. So I think originally that really drove them with their songwriting.
It's part of the Beatles, you know, it's without that, I think there would have been another great band, but I think that's the sort of the whole issue of love is what established them at the top in the first place. So they wisely kept that sort of theme running through their output.
Had they been singing about women and different things, or singing about, as opposed to girls, I think we probably would have missed a message, and I don't think they would have been nearly as big as they were. Years later, they began to write songs about, like, for instance, She's a Woman. That would be where I would think they suddenly, when we were all a little bit older then too, so it was probably their evolution along with us that made them continue on to be strong with that group of Beatlemaniacs, I guess.
She's a woman who understands. She's a woman who loves a man. I love, don't give me presents. I know that she's no present. Only ever has to give me love forever and forever. And my love don't give me presents.
She's a Woman tends to go back to that bareness. It's a very uncluttered sort of texture. The emphasis is very much on the voice and the melody because there's not really much else going on. And I see that as a positive, as a sort of retrenchment almost, because that will look ahead to things like Norwegian Wood, where they can approach a thinner texture in a positive way and realise perhaps that everybody doesn't have to play all the time. The other particularly striking thing about She's a Woman is the title. Because up to this point, they've been singing about little girls, and all of a sudden they're singing about a woman. Well, that says something, doesn't it? I Feel Fine will always be remembered for the feedback front. Big mistake, very genius to leave it.
Now, there is some debate over, was it in fact the first song with feedback, and whether it was or not is up for debate, but it's the first one that I ever heard.
And it's a fun song. Again, the Beatles could deliver the goods. I Feel Fine, a Lennon song, She's a Woman, a McCartney song. A great combination of something for everybody there.
I think that the process of moving from songs which depend on their chord structures to songs which depend on riffs is missed. I mean, we never really focus on that moment of change, but it's a fundamental change, and it begins to happen in around 1965, 1966. In 2005, we're playing out the consequences of that move. So this is crucial.
As opposed to their earlier albums. The songs were a little bit uneven.
It's actually the last one I ever bought because I didn't know anything on it except 8 days a week, and having got hold of it, I've never listened to it again.
I think it's a marvelous album. It's one of my favorites, as a matter of fact. To me, they didn't sound tired at all. No.
But there is a burnt out, tired sort of element that's underlying the whole album. And in fact, you can see on the album cover, the photographer Robert Freeman took the shot, and they look tired. There's a sort of glazed look in their eye as opposed to this sort of kind of impish, springy look that they usually get, you know.
I don't think it was a tired record. It was like, to me, I think what we do in this day and age when we make albums, we do the first album, then we think the next album must be different.
Oh dear, what can I do? Baby's in black and I'm feeling blue. Tell me, oh, what can I do? I think of her, but she thinks only of him. And now it's only a whim. She thinks of him.
They weren't as happy. That's the other thing. They were a little more kind of down, you know, where their earlier albums were upbeat.
All of a sudden we're seeing songs where the Beatles aren't just talking about something, they're actually talking about experiences that they had or inner feelings. Lennon's often talked about songs like I'm a Loser or Help as being sort of how he felt at the time or what was going through his head, and writing that down, putting that into a song, very autobiographical. And that was something we weren't seeing 2 albums before that.
Ooh, I need your love, babe. Guess you know it's true. Hope you need my love, babe. Just like I need you. Hold me, love me. Hold me, love me. I ain't got nothing but love, babe. 8 days a week.
8 days a week. Of course, there's a play on words as well. So, yeah, the band were probably, working 8 days a week.
I think so, and I'm wondering 8 days a week, that might have been another Ringoism maybe. He seemed to be, even though Ringo wasn't writing a lot of songs, he definitely gave John and Paul lots of good ideas for things.
Almost harks back a little bit to their earlier sort of skiffle rock and roll period. Certainly George Harrison's sort of guitar playing sounds a lot like Carl Perkins, one of his heroes, a sort of countrified guitarist.
It starts off very slow, they faded it up. And I think up until that point, there wasn't many rock and roll songs that faded up.
I'd never heard that done before. So just something a little bit different. The Beatles were always looking for different ways to present their music, and that was something totally different.
The texture of the verse changes, and this is something that's going to become much more important for the Beatles subsequently. And I suspect it's George Martin who's involvement saying, just change what you're doing there. You know, the harmony's fine, the melody's fine, the lyrics are fine, but let's just change the way it's being played.
8 days a week, I love you. 8 days a week is not enough to show I care.
Is it a description of how hard they're working? Probably. Probably like a hard day's night. I've had a hard day's night, which means they've been working day and night, 8 days a week. Yes, they probably feel as though they've been working 8 days a week. But, you know, I can't be that analytical. I just put the record on and think, wish I could write a song like that. Unbelievable.
Hold me, love me, hold me, love me. I ain't got nothing but love, babe. 8 days a week, 8 days a week, 8 days a week.
I saw the Beatles twice at Hammersmith Odeon on their Christmas shows. You couldn't hear anything. The noise was mental. The girls were wetting themselves. it was all getting silly.
Got to remember, back in those days, guitar amplifiers were 30 watt. You didn't really have the amplification systems that you have now. You didn't even have the amplifications you would have at the end of the 60s. So really, when it came to playing live, the Beatles were always onto a loser.
In a lot of cases, they had to just kind of wing it and hope that they were all playing together. When you listen to the old tape recordings of these performances, they did pretty darn good, you know, considering they couldn't hear themselves.
I'm gonna tell Aunt Mary about Uncle John. He said he got the missy, but he got a lot of fun on baby. Yeah, now baby. Ooh, baby. I saw for the night. Yeah. I saw Uncle John with Bo did it Sally. He saw Mary coming and he come and get me out here, baby. Yeah, now baby. Ooh, baby. I saw for the night. Wow.
It was an event. You know, musically maybe they probably couldn't even hear the Beatles. I mean, the Beatles couldn't even hear themselves play. So, I mean, you went there to be there kind of thing. I think that was the whole idea with the Beatles concerts at that time.
So, you know, what are your criteria for a great live band? If the criterion is, well, somebody who can whip up a hell of a lot of enthusiasm, well, they didn't even have to play a note in order to do that. So, yes, they were a great live band, but were they great musicians on stage? Possibly not.
They were a very good band, but they were never given the chance to be a good band once they became really popular, because you could just hear nothing but screaming. I only saw them when everyone was going mental and potty, and it was a great privilege to say I've seen the Beatles, but I didn't actually hear them.
The Beatles played rock and roll very well, and they also came up with these extraordinary original songs which didn't talk down to people. I think that's the important thing. That's why the Beatles struck a chord with so many people, not just teenage girls screaming at John and Paul, but the whole adult world as well loved the Beatles very quickly.
You think of a Beatles song, you think, Christ, I wish I could write a song like that, but not anyone could think of them. It was the simplicity of them which made them very clever. And everyone goes, oh no, it's not very clever. It's not very clever now because it's been done. But remember, they opened those doors, no one else did.
Once they did that first album live in the studio, the next albums after that they wanted to play with some of the controls themselves and get behind the console, and I think that had a huge impact on their sound and their growth, and I don't think we'd be listening to them today if they just remained in the studio and somebody else was behind the glass in the engineer booth. The fact that the Beatles wanted to get in and control what their sound was going to sound like had a huge impact on their final outcome of any of their albums.
Help was the end of a chapter of the Beatles' career. It was like, although probably unknowing to them, had closed the chapter on the first part of their career.
Help came at the end of pretty much 2 years of solid touring for the Beatles, and as the title would suggest, John Lennon was quite keen that somebody stopped the merry-go-round and let him off.
They've had this success for a few years, and I think a lot of it was getting to them. They couldn't go anywhere without being seen and bothered and disturbed. So I think it was a true cry for help, and I think a lot of the innocence of the band and the music was coming to an end at that stage of their career.
Help, I think, definitely was an album that was the last album where you had rockers like Dizzy Miss Lizzy. They had more years of experience as songwriters behind them. They had a bit more time now to experiment more in the studio.
They became quite powerful within the record company because they were selling lots of records, and they could do a little bit more of what they wanted to do, and consequently what they'd been up to in their private life was then coming out in the making of the records.
Yesterday, all my troubles seem so far away. Now it looks as though they're here to stay. Oh, I believe in yesterday.
Well, Yesterday is certainly one of the most, if not the most, celebrated of all the Beatles songs.
Well, I think that was kind of a kind of crucial moment in the Beatles' career, really, where people realised that they were not just the four mop tops, they really were masterful songwriters.
She had to go, no, no, she wouldn't say. I said something wrong, now I long for yesterday.
And of course it attracted a whole other area of audience, a lot of other people who might not have listened to a Beatles record suddenly thought, oh, that's nice, that's different.
It was something that I think McCartney himself was worried that he'd actually heard somewhere and that he was reproducing someone else's music. He went around asking friends, is this a song I've written or do you recognise it from somewhere else? And it was only when he was satisfied it was his own work that he'd go into the studio and record it.
Even though it can be considered sort of a middle-of-the-road song, it was covered by so many different people. You know, it really was a hallmark song for the Beatles because they were a rock and roll band, and here was a rock and roll song using a string quartet in it.
The reason everyone fawned over Yesterday is because it's the first time they used strings. Simple. It's the first time an orchestra started on, and they started to expand their musical ideas, and that's why everyone goes for it. Ah, the Beatles have written a ballad. Basically, that's because people haven't listened to the other albums, because there's a few in there.
This is the first song of the Beatles where I feel the words have been really worked at. He's brought them together in a perfect marriage. It's a terrific song.
Oh, I believe in yesterday.
Well, although he didn't write songs at that point, Ringo was always given a song per album. That naturally was a country and western hit for Buck Owens, and it was considered that Ringo would probably do a reasonable job on one of these songs. Obviously it wouldn't be something that perhaps people would buy the album for.
It was sort of a comical sort of thing, and when Ringo performed it on the Ed Sullivan Show, you know, it was a song that was on the charts for Buck Owens at the time, and since the Beatles were in movies at that same period doing Help and having done A Hard Day's Night, I think it kind of fit in quite well with the kind of goofy persona they like to give for Ringo.
The Beatles loved country music, and I think they just thought it'd be a good way to kind of get one in there.
In terms of prominence, well, you've got to give the drummer something to do, and I think Ringo performed most of his songs pretty creditably.
A lot of people forget that before Brian Epstein got hold of the Beatles and smartened them up, they were leather-clad rockers, and that's what they listened to. So it was inherent in the music that they'd grown up listening to and learning to play.
I'm Down has got a lot of elements of a pastiche about it. It's a little bit Jerry Lee Lewis, a little bit American, going back towards perhaps the days of Roll Over Beethoven.
It's highlighted by George's confident guitar solo and John's semi-crazed organ solo. And it's to Ringo's credit that he manages to keep a steady backbeat and hold the madness together.
Ticket to Ride has a very unique drum sound to it, and I believe it was Paul McCartney that suggested Ringo use that kind of drumming style in it. No one had used that kind of a drumming style in a rock song before in that way.
So I think those, like Ticket to Ride and I'm Down, is just them trying to write songs that they would like to play on stage and like to give them a bit of a boost, bit rockier, bit more of a live approach.
John Lennon's strengths as a performer definitely fell within the scouse scallywag kind of image.
Everyone knew he was a bit of a sarky bugger. Everyone knew that he could be a bit cruel, but he was also a very honest man. And he gave the Beatles that edge, that little bit of toughness, that little bit of sarcasm, that little bit of danger that they needed to balance it out.
He worked good against Paul's songwriting. When you look at a lot of their songs that they worked on, you know, Paul would often have like an optimistic viewpoint, and then Lennon would come in with sort of a more realistic view. They would work against each other, and it would make an awesome song. And I think it's what made them a strong songwriting partner team.
He could sing a soft ballad, or he could sing raspy, raunchy rock and roll. And he could sing equally as well with a band, or even as a solo artist. John was a genius.
They also, at this time, in the middle of the 60s, they experimented with marijuana. That makes me laugh. Because, you know, there's great stories of them dropping speed in Hamburg to stay awake, to do those 6 sets a night. So this wasn't the first time they experimented with drugs.
Obviously, drugs haven't always worked in a positive way to improve people's music, but certainly marijuana and later LSD, the effects did come through in a kind of otherworldly fashion in the Beatles' music.
I think it definitely had to influence their songwriting. And you do see a bit of that change, based also with the heavy influence in sort of folk and first-person kind of songwriting with different songs that the Beatles were doing at that point in their careers.
John, he became a little more autobiographical. Paul, his music started telling more of a story. And George, he became more spiritual.
Everyone loves to think, okay, right, in about 1966, in February, they started taking marijuana. What load of bollocks. You know, they've been taking it for years. So has everyone else. You know, this is just it always makes me laugh. Okay, let's talk about the Beatles' drug years. What do you mean, from when they were born?
Won't you please, please help?
Can the drug culture be traced to the movie Help? I would say no. I didn't see that in that movie, so I'm not quite sure what people mean when they refer to that.
The Beatles said that when they were doing Help, that they were high most of the time. And, I mean, it's hard to really see that in the film. I mean, they do act kind of goofy in some of the things and seem quite laid back. But, I mean, the whole nature of the film, you know, being chased by some sort of cult that wants the ring off Ringo's finger and some evil scientists trying to get the ring as well. I mean, it lends to being kind of slapstick and farcical.
I am not what I seem.
The humour, it was like a communication to the audience, you know, we've smoked a bit of marijuana and they knew that the audience probably had, so there was a connection there.
I don't think it was done in a very serious way. It was done in a very slapstick way. Dick Lester, who directed both the Beatles films, did it in the right way with a bit of tongue-in-cheek so it wasn't taken too serious and people couldn't get offended too quickly. I think it's not made really obvious, but they definitely hint at it.
Okay, who let it out?
Oh, dear, no. We're not going there. We just put it round, we're going there. We're not going there. We just put it round, we're going there. Just so everybody would think we were going there.
I'd like to go there.
You wouldn't like it.
Where are we going then?
Never you mind.
Rubber Soul, the second Beatles fully written album.
He's a real nowhere man, sitting in his nowhere land, making all his nowhere plans for another man. Doesn't have a point of view, knows not where he's going to. Isn't he a bit like you and me?
By the time Rubber Soul came around, most of their recording sessions would start at like 9 or 10 o'clock at night and go to 4 or 5 in the morning. This was basically because of their lifestyle and the fact that they had a bit more carte blanche to do a lot more different things in Abbey Road.
More than ever before, they started recording their music just using single tracks rather than playing so much live in the studio as they did when they first started out.
George Martin, great musician, started to help them arrange, started to put strings, started to put brass on things, started to help them.
He would say, well, chaps, you know, we've got an oboe makes an interesting sound there, or a flugelhorn, or, you know, and they'd say, well, let's hear it, George, can we get it? And he would get the classical musicians in to play it, and they'd say, that's great, you know. So here was a very different approach to recording.
They didn't see any reason for changing keys at the wrong time. They didn't see any reason for not doing this. They just saw no reason for not doing anything like that. So when it came to Rubber Soul, they kicked in big time. That was the first of 5 classic records to be made.
Once the Beatles knew that they'd got the public ear and that they didn't have to fight to be heard, the music became more interesting, the songs became more interesting. Perhaps it was the lyrics that really became more interesting, because Lennon and McCartney started putting their own problems into song.
You see the Beatles not trying to write a love song or trying to write something for a specific group. They really wanted to broaden their scope and to write songs that were either based on life experiences or on how the way they felt about things.
Lennon and McCartney are seeing the possibilities of the popular song as an expressive form rather than simply as a set of procedures, a set of formulae that have been handed down.
I think a lot of songs at that stage, they were taking their time and they were looking inside and asking, is this really what it's all about?
There were young guys growing up in this madness, and they'd seen everything. They'd done it all, they'd seen it all, they'd probably taken it all, God knows. But they were growing up, so they started to see things, and they started to see things in a different way. I mean, Norwegian Wood is a wonderful piece of writing, absolutely wonderful.
George Harrison had been learning to play sitar, and he introduced sitar into the track, and it fits nicely in the track. One of the things that the Beatles were able to do was introduce alien instruments to the sound, so to speak, and make it work.
Okay.
Yellow Submarine was written by Paul. It was all about a dream that he had had. And the whole idea of it, he always thought it was, you know, kind of a children's song.
We all live in a yellow submarine, yellow submarine, yellow submarine. We all live in a yellow submarine, yellow submarine, yellow submarine. And our friends are all aboard, many more of them live next door. And the band begins to play.
Again, it was written specifically for Ringo to sing it, and so the range, the vocal range is very narrow, and they would deliberately do that when they wrote for Ringo.
George Martin helped out. He had a closet, he showed the Beatles, full of all kinds of different weird instruments they could use, and they used tons of sound effects. It was just time for them to have a lot of fun in the studio.
That was one of the joys of the Beatles, was that they could be a group for all seasons and appeal to so many different, social groups. It wasn't just a band producing clever music for the Times critics to mull over. They would come up with these daft little ditties now and then, and that was certainly a daft little ditty.
As we live a life of ease, every one of us has all we need.
So if you look at the album as a whole, they take a number of different approaches and are opening wide the possibilities of what a popular song can take on in terms of subject matter. Yellow Submarine is simply one of those.
It goes on an album that's packed with classics. I mean, Revolver, nearly the best album they ever made. Maybe the best album they ever made. Eleanor Rigby, Here, There and Everywhere, She Said, I'm Only Sleeping. I mean, that album has 14 classics on it.
Eleanor Rigby died in the church and was buried along with her name. Nobody came, Father Mackenzie, wiping the dirt from his hands as he walks from the grave. No one was saved, all the lonely people. Where do they all come from? All the lonely people. Where do they all belong?
Sgt. Pepper, fated as the Beatles' true masterpiece. I put it down to one thing and one thing only. The Times gave it a great review. Stamp of approval. For me, bit of a smokescreen.
If you're hip, then Sgt. Pepper is not the greatest Beatles album, it's Revolver. If you're not, and I guess I'm not, then Sgt. Pepper is the sort of, I suppose, the pinnacle.
A 1, a 2, a 3.
It's not something that the Beatles themselves had tried before, the mixture of different images, sounds, styles. It really does stand as a one of a kind.
The packaging was unbelievably clever. You know, it came at you, it had the whole psychedelic swinging 60s thing about it. It just came at you, them in uniforms, the whole lot. It was just unbelievably perfect.
You had the lyrics on the sleeve. You know, this is really the first signal that, hey, when you're listening to this stuff, you should listen to the lyrics as well as just the groove and the melody.
It was definitely a real departure. It sort of set the standard for other bands to try to come up to the same standards as what the Beatles were doing at that time. And it only came about because the Beatles, I believe, had more free time in their hands and they weren't touring anymore.
If I'd been out till 3:15, would you lock the door? Will you still need me? Will you still feed me when I'm 64? You'll be older too.
I thought that they hadn't really finished what they set out to do, which was to write one big piece of music. I mean, it's full of marvellous things, like, you know, but they don't really link together. I think it was supposed to be a concept album, but I mean, When I'm 64 and Day in the Life don't really link thematically.
As a concept record, which had never been made before, yes, it was brilliant. Rubber Soul and Revolver, I think, in some ways are probably stronger records, but if you say what was their masterpiece, I would have to say it would be Sgt. Pepper's, because it also captured the era.
It's a work of exploration and experimentation. It could have sort of fallen flat on its face. Commercially speaking, I think the world was shocked by the release of Sgt. Pepper's, but within months, I think the world loved Sgt. Pepper's, and it was being hailed as a masterpiece way back then.
Carry on, lad. Carry on.
Riding on the coattails of Sgt. Pepper's album, it seemed the Beatles could do no wrong.
Everything they'd done from their first hit up till then had received everybody's praise. Magical Mystery Tour basically was the first false step where the public and all the critics could have a bit of a go at them.
When it was shown on television in black and white at Christmas time that year, it didn't go down terribly well. The public were confused by it. The critics didn't like it. So it was like the first bad reviews the Beatles had ever really experienced. It was quite a bit of a blow for them.
And the Beatles were so worried, in fact, that they had it shown again in colour about 2 weeks later. But strange enough, the damage had been done.
A lot of people said, well, it would never have happened with Brian Epstein. When Brian Epstein was alive, he wouldn't have allowed it because it was too obscure, it wasn't direct enough, etc., etc.
They'd just thrown all these elements together, got in a bus and driven around and filmed what happened.
And it never really came across as this happy magical mystery tour that it was supposed to be. It came across as a bit of a mess.
All this mud in 45 minutes. I can hardly get my breath.
It's intake, Jessie, not output.
I am already. 3 times this week already.
For goodness sake, Jessie, sit down. Remember.
I think it was probably the first album perhaps where Paul would bring a song to the studio and it was Paul's song, and John would bring a song and it was John's song, George would bring a song. So I think the Beatles as a unit is lost on that album to some degree.
So I don't think it works as an album at all. It wasn't conceived as an album. It's a more old-fashioned notion of putting out a long player with some good songs on it and a little bit of make weight.
The song I Am the Walrus, is it a paean to drug culture?
I'm the Walrus. Here we go. Let's analyse everything they ever did. No, I don't think it's something that tries to encapsulate the drug culture of the late 60s in any way.
I would have said I Am the Walrus was more of a two fingers up to the powers that be rather than anything that particularly glorified drugs.
You know, if Dylan can come up with these crap lyrics that don't actually mean anything, well, we can do it intentionally. And this, as far as I understand, is exactly what Lennon was aiming for.
The band have turned into a proper rock band by this point. The days of sort of kind of the Fab Four are long gone. The whole sort of pretty boy McCartney and the sort of hard-edged Lennon, that's all kind of dissolved into, they sort of merged more into each other. That's really, you can really see that coming through on this song in particular.
What a great video they did with it in Magical Mystery Tour. Is that great? Where they're all standing there with masks and things. And those pictures, you see that picture so many times with the white piano and they're all wearing masks and things. It's great.
Regardless of that, you know, the lyrical content is weird but strong, but the musical thing is fantastic. All these sort of slightly odd cellos playing in the background. It's great, you know. Their strength was music.
They followed this lovely coloured, mad, psychedelic album cover with a white album. Very clever. Then they decided to do a double album. Very clever.
The Beatles had spent a period in India, and the Beatles came back to England to start their next album, and they had hundreds of songs.
It wasn't an album that showed that they were particularly a group working together well, as they had done in the mid-60s. Everything had come up to a peak perhaps with Sgt. Pepper, but with the White Album you were seeing a group basically falling slowly apart.
In a way, pound for pound, probably even better than Sgt. Pepper. But of course, the great Sgt. Pepper will always be hailed. I think Sgt. Pepper is a great album, but I also think the White Album's a great album.
There's far too much country guitar coming through in a lot of, well, actually right the way through to sort of 68, 69, which I think is sort of more Harrison's forte.
George was basically there to fill in the bits between John and Paul's singing. So he only had a certain canvas on which he could paint, and in doing so he would try to serve the song rather than create any kind of statement.
George held it back, and that's part of his appeal. You wanted to hear more.
You looked forward to hearing the middle eighth in a song where there'd be a bit of a George Harrison guitar solo in it.
Very understated, but what he played was always really important.
Abbey Road is an unbelievable piece of work. Absolutely, probably close to their best piece of work they've ever made.
I think by the time Abbey Road came out, the Beatles were really looking into sort of what they were going to do when they finished as a band.
The end was in sight for the Beatles, and so although I still wouldn't say they'd run out of steam as writers, perhaps it was becoming slightly evident that it was more of a chore, really. It was lesser kind of inspiration.
They left the best epitaph to a band they could ever leave. That was probably one of their best records ever, and it was phenomenal.
If you're looking at the times of recording, the final Beatles album was really Abbey Road, but Let It Be emerged after Abbey Road as the final release. Obviously that meant that people considered that the Beatles' career ended with Let It Be, and the band themselves weren't happy with that.
The last thing, which, you know, could have been, you know, thanks very much everybody, you know, it's been fun but we're not going to do it anymore. It ended up being a really bitter and nasty divorce.
It would have been far better, in fact, had Abbey Road been the final released Beatles album, but fate decreed that it wouldn't be.
But even at the end, the Beatles were still making great records and still producing thoughtful pieces of music, timeless pieces of music.
And it's quite a sad end to what was an absolutely fantastic career.
I think the Beatles broke a mould that said that pop music is of its time, because for Beatles fans and for pop fans, Beatles music is forever.
They could rock with the best of them, but they could do a ballad as sweet as anybody.
Even if they were playing rock and roll, it's very balanced and tasteful. That's the trick, I think, that they achieved, really.
They gave a whole generation a meaning, and they gave the whole music industry its start.
The world needed something different, and they came around at the right time.
So if you think about it in modern day context, how long does a band last? 2 or 3 years? Well, the Beatles did a bit better than that and produced an incredible amount of music.
All my love.